Hey, I'm Nick DiMatteo, and welcome to Music is Not a Genre, the interview edition. Thank you for tuning in, whether it is to the audio version of this on any of the streaming services distributed through anchor.fm/music is not a genre, where you can also donate, which would help support this podcast, or through the video version of this, which is at patreon.com/music is not a genre. Thank you for being a member of that family. And as always, you can see almost everything I do at youtube.com/Nick DiMatteo. Let's get right to it. With me today is Mike Indovina. He is a recording, mixing, and mastering engineer, an online educator who runs masteryourmix.com, which focuses on helping musicians create professional quality recordings from their home studios. Some of his credits include Hang Time and Nothing Serious. We're going to get into some of that because I've listened to it and it's great stuff. A couple other things. He is a drummer, as you can see if you're watching the video, and the author of an Amazon #1 selling book, The Mixing Mindset, the step-by-step formula for creating professional rock mixes from your home studio. Mike, how are you doing today?
Doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying yes. I'm really excited about this.
Of course.
So it's a bit of a different question than I ask other people because I've been pulling from my circle, and it's an ever-widening circle. But in this case, we're sort of new to each other. Can you tell everyone how we connected?
Yeah, so we originally met through my website, masteryourmix.com. So as Nick said there, I've been running a website for the past few years, teaching musicians how to create pro recordings from their home studio. And just through a bunch of the content that I put out, I've got like blogs, videos, podcast episodes, my book that Nick also mentioned as well. I think through that's how you and I connected, right? You were on my mailing list, and I think that just through some back and forth interaction, that's how we got chatting.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I had started, I guess the year it might have been, looking for resources, and you were one of the very small handful that popped up that I said, oh, I need to check this out. So
cool.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and we're going to get into that too. My favorite question, because it leads to pretty much everything else, and you can interpret this however you want. You can make it short. I prefer longer, but that's totally okay. Start wherever you want to start from. Can you tell everyone your story?
Yeah, for sure. So basically I got my start in music as a drummer when I was 10. I mean, you can see the drums behind me, obviously. So when I was 10, I got into drumming kind of for a funny reason. Like, I got into drumming because of competition, more or less. So I had a friend in elementary school who was like, he was like the cool guy, and he was like the guy that all the girls swooned over and this and that. And he was a musician. He was a drummer. And I remember his band had performed at our school talent show. And after that, like, all the girls were just like, oh my God, like, this guy's amazing, whatever, right? So I was like, what, screw this guy. I'm going to show him up, and I'm going to take drum lessons with the same teacher, and I'm just going to get better at him. And that'll be my end with the girls. I was thinking about that when I was 10. But anyway, I got into drumming, and over the years I joined a bunch of different bands, and I was fortunate enough to have a couple bands that took it very serious, and we did a lot of touring. I had one band that was signed to like a major label, so we had like distribution and all that stuff, and just band life was like the focus of my life for a good chunk of my life, and trying to be a professional musician. But along the way, I've always been like a techie kind of guy, and I was always really fascinated watching the sound guys, because I was like, if this music stuff doesn't work out for me as a musician, like, how cool is it that these guys get to work on music every day and like listen to artists and just listen to music all day and play with some cool looking stuff. So I kind of took an interest in audio production, mainly as a way of just like kind of working for my own band, really. I was also noticing at the same time that I was getting interested in it, that like I was getting extremely frustrated with the process of songwriting with my band, because what was happening was we would always get together. We'd get together a couple of nights a week, and we would spend hours and hours workshopping songs, and then relying on our memories to put the songs together next time we jammed. And inevitably, we'd always forget it all. And I just felt like it was such a waste of time to spend hours like trying out like different arrangements and different drum fills or different guitar lines and this and that, and like trying to like craft the perfect song. And then by the end of practice, it would be perfect. And then inevitably, like next time we got together, like everything would just crumble apart, or we forgot the cool stuff, or maybe an idea that someone really was like stuck with that we kind of like, we're like, maybe we won't use that. Like, they're trying to bring that up again next time around. And so it was just like, it just felt like I was really frustrated with that process. And so I was like, well, why don't I just get into this recording stuff? Because I like it. We can record our practices. We have a record of our songs. We can kind of critique ourselves as well, because that's another big thing, right? Like when you're just playing in a room, it's so loud all the time, you can't really hear like the little minutia things. And so having those recordings, I felt that just made us better musicians in general. And so yeah, I was kind of like doing the band thing, recording our band, and like getting practice recording other bands, like local bands, just trying to find whoever would come to the studio. And originally it was just like, hey, I'll record your band if like you buy me a microphone or something like that. Like that was kind of the deal I was working on, because I was just like, I don't have a lot of gear, so why not just like fund these projects by getting the equipment that I needed, and like tell a band like, hey, like, if I have this microphone or I have this compressor or this preamp or whatever, then like, well, I'll use it on your project. It will sound better because I'll have the right tools. And we'll just work off of that. And so slowly but surely, like I was building up my studio, and just over the years, as my band started to break up, I just was like, okay, well, I guess I'll focus more time on the audio production side of things. And yeah, maybe I'm going longer than you expected, but so yeah, I eventually like went to school for audio production, and then from there, I just dabbled in a lot of different areas of the music industry. I was working in audio post production, doing sound for film and TV. I was working as live sound engineer, doing like doing monitors in front of the house, and I did some tour managing. And then I was always in the studio, like one way or another. I was always recording bands as well, so that was always going on. And then yeah, like I said, as my bands broke up, I just dedicated way more time to that, and I kind of discovered that like the band thing is really ultimately what I love doing the most. It's what I was trying to do for my whole life, right? Like work with other musicians and be in a band and write songs and produce and that kind of thing. So it just felt natural to focus on working in the studio with artists, and that's kind of what I just dedicated my life to after that, after all my bands broke up. And then about I think it was 4 years ago, I started off MasterYourMix.com as a way of helping musicians, because again, like I just felt like as my bands broke up, and I just wanted to have more conversations with musicians. And to me, like the website was just a way for me to talk about music production stuff, because I love doing that, and to connect with more musicians and to help people put out more music, because I really do feel like there's a lot of positive impact that can come from having your songs out there. But yet there's so many musicians that are writing amazing songs and recording their own demos, and then they scrap these songs because maybe they're not happy with the results, and or they can't afford to go to like a big studio. And so a lot of these great songs are just kind of being scrapped. And I really do feel like there's a lot of positive influence that could be, or positive impact that could be made by just having your music out there. So yeah, Master Mix was just a way of me nerding out about recording stuff and helping musicians. And that ultimately brings me to where I am today, and, teaching the stuff and helping out musicians, and, trying to just create more music out there.
I love that you say that you think that, putting music out there can make a positive impact, and that your, primary part in it, I guess I'll say, is helping people who have this great material make it sound as great as its inception is. Mm-hmm. And I guess I think that's what drew me to you, was the idea that so many of us are recording at home now, for so many reasons, but primarily it's financial. There are a whole lot of musicians who would love to just be out there in the big studios or whatever with other musicians and pulling it all together and doing it the way things had always been done up until, fairly recently. But we can't afford that, or we have other constraints that cause us to work from home. So now you would step in and say, well, listen, everybody's got their strengths and their weaknesses. Something that you're so good at that you focus on is the ability to listen to what someone is doing in their home studio and say, oh man, I love what you're doing. I see where you're going with this. We can probably make this a little better, or tweak this, or I can give you the whole template of how to, do all that. And do you feel like the impact that music makes is greater if the results from the studio are better?
Yeah, I absolutely do, because I think that if your music sounds good, people will listen to it. Like I read a stat recently that said something like, I think it said that, like, it was something like, it was some ridiculous number, like 70% of people turn off a song within the first 5 seconds or something like that. It was a ridiculous stat. I should probably get the actual number, but it was something to that degree.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, like, well, what happens in the first 5 seconds? And it's like, well, people hear the quality of it right away. That's like one of the biggest indicators. And also, like, in the first 5 6 seconds, whatever, like maybe you have a vocal line or you have like some catchy riff or whatever, but ultimately, like, there's not a whole lot going on in like 5 seconds, so it's like you really have to make it sound professional enough for people to consider that it could even be good. If people hear something that sounds like it's been recorded on a cell phone or whatever, most likely they're going to just kind of dismiss the quality of it and maybe not think that it's as polished, or like your music isn't going to be as professional or whatever. And so that's really why, like, I think I totally agree that, like, having good quality music just makes people feel more engaged with it. They're going to listen, they're going to give it a shot. Whereas if you just record something really poorly, then people might dismiss it right away and not even give it a chance. So, I think that impact definitely goes a lot further when you have good quality music.
Yeah, there are charitable people out there who will listen to anything and absorb the essence of it and love it. But in general, I think we do kind of make those distinctions. And one of the things that I think that's common to all art is that people enjoy it more if you make it look easy. And to me, a good recording is, well, they don't have to try. It's there, everything, they can hear everything. It's not too tinny or trebly, it's not, killing their woofers or whatever, but it just has everything kind of nice in the pocket. And all they need to do is listen to the song and enjoy it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, the more you can, the less distractions you give the listener, the more engaged they're going to be, the more they're just going to sit down and enjoy it. So yeah, I think, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in a recording, whether it's like bad tones or bad performances or just bad songwriting or whatever. But I think that, like, the more you dial those things in, the less reason you give your listener to turn off the song. So, yeah, it's crucial to me to get really good sounding stuff, because also, like, you can create a lot of energy by just having, like, really clean, polished tracks too. Like, if something moves you, if like it's hitting the speakers a certain way and, like, it makes you feel things, so that just causes a different reaction in the body of the listener. So, I mean, maybe that sounds like little woo woo or whatever you want to call it, but, like, I firmly do believe that, like, if you have music that just hits you a certain way, you're gonna feel the impact of that arrangement or that kick drum or whatever. Like, that, it's gonna provide you the emotion and the feel of the song.
I know, I totally agree. I think, I mean, by default, music is physical because we're listening to it. But I think even beyond that, it's much more physical than people realize.
Of course.
You think of people who, like deaf people who can't hear that well, can still sense a rhythm and kind of feel what's going on there. Well, that goes beyond just the listening. It's actually in the body. And that idea of creating this sonic world where you have the warmth and you have the oomph and it's inviting, and you have, some things that kind of poke through and catch your attention. That goes beyond the quality of the songwriting or even the quality of the performance itself. It's how you put the sound together.
For sure. And there's lots of different effects that things like even tempo can make. Like, there's a reason, like, why 120 beats per minute is kind of like a standard in dance music. It's because it gets your heart going. It feels like a natural rhythm. It's like it's just, it energizes you at that tempo. So that's why a lot of music tends to be around that tempo when you're trying to make something that's a little bit more exciting. It's something that does move people. It's like at a nightclub or something like that. People are dancing to that rhythm, and you're giving people a tempo that they can dance to. If you play it too fast, then it's like, okay, people don't know what to do. They freak out. They don't know how to dance to it. And if it's too slow, well, then it's like more of a ballad or maybe a slow dance kind of thing, And, like, so it changes our reaction to the music as we hear different tempos. And that's just one element, you know.
That's just one element, but it's funny you bring that up because I'm in a cover band that has a bunch of iterations, and one of them is we do all Beatles,
Mhm.
and we're constantly, there's one guy who's like, we need to do it, the exact key of the original or whatever it is, and you'll look in a book and it says, well, it's C, but then the recording is C sharp. Why? Because they determined that the tempo of it wasn't quite right. And at back then, that all they could do was just speed the whole thing up. It goes up a half step and it fools people into thinking they played the whole damn thing in C sharp, but the tempo made a difference.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Absolutely.
Now, but just, and on the same subject, anyone out there who is a working musician who's creating their own music, if you have any hope of submitting your stuff for licensing or use in any type of other media, that recording quality becomes even more important, because then it goes beyond just the enjoyment that the listener is getting, but there has to be a certain level that you reach so that it can be just put seamlessly into whatever project.
For sure. I mean, obviously, we all want our music to sound as good as it can, and I think that should be the goal, right? Like, we want to, if you're gonna put your music out there, why wouldn't you want it to sound the best it absolutely can, right? To me, it just seems like a cop out to do it half-ass and not, put the effort into to making it sound good. But that said, I mean, it doesn't need to be always like the highest quality to still make an impact with your music too, right? And like, as a recording engineer, I mean, I guess that goes kind of against like what I stand for, of like, you should have amazing sounding music, but I'll admit that like, done is better than perfect. And and in that sense, like, having your music out there just has that ability to jumpstart your career or make whatever impact with your listeners and that kind of stuff. And just as a personal anecdote for that, like, my the reason why I'm so passionate about the impact of music is because personally, like, I felt like when I was in a band years ago, like, listening back to the music now, I think at the time I thought we were amazing. I thought we had the greatest quality recordings and this and that, and we had some decent recordings, but like, I'll always remember, like, one night after a show, like, we were such a jokey band, like, we didn't take ourselves serious. Our songs were like just fun, jokey songs. Like, we were sloppy musicians back then. Like, so all the things were working against us in a way, right? But I'll always remember, like, after one show, I had these two girls come up to me, and I kind of knew them. They were like kind of like super fans of our band. They would go to all our shows. But one night they pulled me aside and they're like, "Hey, Mike, like, we have something we want to show you." And they both revealed that they got matching tattoos of my band's logo on them. And I was like, what? Like, why would you do that? Like, I don't even have that. And it turned out that they met at my shows and became friends, but they bonded over the fact that they were both suicidal, but then through my band's music and coming to our shows and just listening to our jokey, fun songs, like, it actually gave them strength to live, to choose to live. And like, it was like a positive, fun message that just like gave them that reinforcement that they needed. And so because of that, our band meant a lot, and that's why they got the tattoos. And like, I would never have thought that our band could have had that impact. Like, we were just, like I said, like, everything was a joke to us. We didn't take anything serious. And to think that like someone took our music seriously enough to like, change the course of their life and like all that stuff, that floored me. And so I always look back at that moment and think, like, done is better than perfect. You just need to have your music out, because obviously that worked for us. But it's just so important to have your music out there. That's the biggest thing to me, is that, and that's why I created my website. I want to help people out with putting it out. And I know that a lot of people don't put out their music because they are self-conscious of the quality of it. So however I can help them get there, that's really ultimately what I'm trying to do.
But yeah, I think most of us are our own worst critics,
Sure.
and we stand in the way of sharing things that we're harshly judging that someone else, like, it might have an impact on someone else's life, and I love that you as someone who makes their living in the studio talking about quality, mixing and recording, is, open enough to say that putting a song out at all, if it's from the heart and good, or whatever, is going to make some kind of an impact. Don't wait until it's perfect. It's like anything else. If you're a novelist who takes 30 years to write a book because there's like 6 words you didn't get right, it's a waste.
It'll never be perfect. It really, it's like there's that saying that like songs are always abandoned, not finished. And I totally agree with that. It's like there's some point where you just have to realize like, okay, I think this is sounding good enough. Like let's just put this out there and see how it goes. As an engineer, it's like I have my own view of what the songs should sound like. So like I could spend days or weeks or whatever working on these songs, but at the end of the day, if I give it to my client and they're like, no, this isn't what we thought, then I'm back to the square one, right? And I have to restart everything. So to me, I think it's like you have to just make the song sound like a song, and it's just gotta feel well. It's got to give you that impact that the song deserves. It's got to have clarity so you can still hear all those instruments. But at some point, you just have to be like, okay, let's see what the consensus is here. Is this good? Is this not? And you just go from there.
Yeah, and generally I can be pretty good at that, but there was one song that I released last year that I guess was a little too close to the heart, maybe, that I ended up doing about 10 different mixes of. And when I listen back to them, I'm like, what was different? Like, why was it so different that I had to keep tweaking? I was just too nervous to release it. And finally I was like, that's it, I'm done. I got to release it. And it's fine. It's not perfect, but it works. Yeah.
And sometimes you actually work against yourself when you spend too much time on your tracks. Like you can actually undo a lot of the really good things. Like another good example, it was, I can't remember the name of the engineer, but I remember hearing that with Michael Jackson when he was doing, I want to say it was Billie Jean, maybe it was Beat It, one of the two. They did something like 92 mixes of that song. And just because like every time they did it, Michael would be like, okay, like, well, why don't we try this? Let's try this. And like after take 92, I think it was Quincy Jones walked into the room and was like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, why are you still working on this song? And he's like, oh, I think we're making it sound better. It's like, okay, play me mix number 92. And they do that. And he's like, okay, now play me mix 2. And like, as soon as they played mix 2, it was like, that's the one. And it just like goes to show like you can sometimes really undo a lot of your great work, and a lot of that just has to do with like the excitement and the energy of just getting started, right? Like when you're motivated, when you're excited about your songs, you're gonna just put that emotion into your songs, and often that emotion is the best thing for connecting with your listener, versus when you start to get too technical about it, it can take away from that initial energy that the song was meant to have.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I want to get back into some of the other stuff you said, because you said a lot about in your history. And by the way, just so you know, I had a guest when I asked, tell me your story. His first line was, my parents conceived me in the year. So I don't think that yours was anywhere near as long as his. It was great. It was great.
I jumped ahead 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. 10's good. 10's good. So you have a pretty extensive background then as a live musician working with bands, and it's like you said, you kind of got your start that way. I one of the first things I wrote down here in my notes was the word competition, and how that kind of kicked you off with your drumming. Do you feel like in some way that that's still a motivator for you?
Not as much these days. Like I realize like in hindsight how childish it was of me to like do it for that reason, but I'm glad I did, because I found the love of my life in drumming, right? And in music. I should also say the second love of my life, because my wife is in the other room. She can hear me. So, but yeah, she can hear me. So
okay, great.
But no, but I mean, I think competition is like one of those things that it's a motivator sometimes, but like you also have to make sure that you don't go too far with it, because I think you can burn a lot of bridges that way as well if you're just too competitive and that's all you care about. I would say that I'm more on the side of collaboration versus competition these days. I'd much rather work with people directly, and work with people. I mean, that's just, to me, like I just love talking about this stuff. I love sharing my love of music, right? That's why when I look back at being in a band, like that was my favorite thing, was like working with a band and like trying different ideas and just having like fun people to hang out with. And we all had this shared mutual interest. So to me, it's like, that's why I look at collaboration as a way better thing, because it still gives me the opportunity to grow. It still gives me the opportunity to build my career but also just have fun with it. So yeah.
I love that because I think that, yeah, there's I guess, a healthy level of competition, but it's something that I've always kind of, been at war with myself because I am not a very competitive person. My competition tends to be with myself, like, oh, I can do better than that, than what I did before. And yet I always wonder if I had more of a healthier kind of like, well, oh, I'm hearing this, I want to match that, or I want to get to the level of this, that it might have changed the course of things in some way.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say like your competition with yourself. I think that that is actually like the biggest motivator for myself. I don't really consider it competition in a way, but it's like I'm always looking to push myself. I'm always looking to grow, challenge myself in new things. And so, yeah, I mean, that motivates me more than anything. Like I know that when I push myself, that's when I often see the best growth. That's when I
Mm.
surprise myself. So that motivates me, I guess. I always just like seeing like what I'm capable of doing. And even from a young age, like I played hockey as a kid, and like I guess back then I was like way more competitive because I was like playing on competitive teams and whatever. But like even back then I look at it and I thought like I wanted to be a hockey player when I was a young kid. So it was like, how can I make myself better at this? Like I practice all the time. I was like, I'd spend hours in the basement just working on my shots and stuff like that. And like to me, it was just like I can push myself to get to grow and be better and better. And over the years, I got to be a pretty good hockey player. But then I found music, and then hockey stopped. So, but with music, it was like the same thing. It was just like, when I first started drumming, obviously I didn't know how to play, and then like just through the years, I was like, I got to get better at this, and you know, even when I thought I was really really good at drumming, like I had to do reality checks, and like I worked with. I'll always remember I had one producer that I worked with who, like, I thought I was writing these amazing drum parts and this and that, and he had a secret meeting with the band after like a practice, and was like, "You got to get rid of your drummer. Like he's just like overplaying on all of these songs, and like it's not making the songs musical. It's just like it's overplaying." And I remember the band chatting with me afterwards, and they told me that, and I was like, at first I was like really upset and like like angry about it, and then I was like, okay, like maybe he's got a point. Maybe great musicians don't have to overplay. Maybe they have to simplify. And so I went down to the basement with my band. We practiced, and I just played like the simplest beats over our songs, and it was like these songs sound better. Like, and it just that made me realize, okay, like it's not about my technical chops. Now it's about just like playing to the song, serving to the song, and that made me a better drummer. It wasn't about being like fast or whatever, that I like all those things that I thought a good drummer was. It was just really about like serving the song. That is ultimately what makes a great drummer. And like I practiced to a click track after that. I tried to get really tight with that. Like I've always just been looking for ways to just make myself work better and more efficiently. And yeah, I guess maybe that's a weird tangent, but yeah, and to answer your question of like, does competition motivate me? I would say it's just more just personal drive to constantly improve.
Yeah, personal drive. That's great. But I think what you said kind of leads into the second part of what you said, which was that collaboration is more what you're into now. And even that example you gave about changing the way you were drumming for those songs has to do with collaboration. And I know from the band that I'm in, we've all been playing for a while, so we kind of know what we're doing, but there's still that sense of, oh, well, Rich is doing something on the guitar that's just wow, like I want to honor the work that we're doing by trying to hang with him and the way he's playing, on my bass or whatever it is, and honor the music itself. And that to me is kind of the essence of collaboration, that you're speaking to each other and working with each other, but you're also kind of honoring the work that we're all doing together.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's when you're in a band, like bands are kind of weird because it's a partnership. So everyone has to work with each other and kind of please each other. But at the same time, you're also working on art that needs to kind of have this simplicity to it, or whatever you want to call it. Like there's like something magical with songs when you nail the right arrangement, or you nail the right performances and parts. and that's what ultimately makes it resonate with people. So, I think there's always two schools of thought with artists. There's like the people who do it to please themselves, and there's the people who do it to please others. And so that's always kind of a balance that you have to strike. But yeah, I've always looked at it more like it's not about my ego. I don't really care. Like when I show my grandkids these songs one day, I don't want them to be like, Grandpa, you're an amazing drummer. Like, no, I don't care. That is like, are they good songs? Like, will you show your friends these still? Like, you know what I mean? Like, like I'd rather be that than like, man, you're so technical, blah, blah, blah.
God, that's great. I love that you said that there's the war, like, are you playing music for yourself or for others? And I grew up with my father's in the music business, and most of his career was playing in nightclubs. And his job was to find the songs that the audience liked. And he ended up getting so good at it that his motivation was really playing for others. And he loved it. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking when I was very young, I don't think I can do that. Like I had to start from a place where I was expressing myself. But it then gets to a point where you realize you kind of need both. Like you play for yourself. There are some auteurs out there who can do that, and they make stuff that people love, and and it goes down in history. But mostly you need to have some level of outreach in what you're doing.
For sure. I think that like I've just gotten to a point now where I've realized just like the very act of playing music to me, like that just gives me enough joy. Like I could be like I could play the simplest drum beat and like just still have the time of my life doing it. You know what I mean? And if I'm playing live and I can see that other people are enjoying it, then that fuels me even more. So it's kind of like it goes back and forth, right? Whereas like if I was just doing complete nonsense and people in the crowd are like, what the hell's going on? Then like I wouldn't feel very good off of that. You know what I mean? So there is that balance, but I've just learned for myself that like just playing music and being involved with music is that's the thing that motivates me. That's the thing that excites me. And yeah, I don't need to showcase. It's not about ego for me. It's just like, let's just have fun with this, and that fun can happen at the most basic level. It can happen it can also happen at a technical level too, but I have more fun, I find, when I'm keeping things simple.
That's great. Yeah, I always feel like whatever serves the music, serves the song. It doesn't have to be the best part in the world. And that best part can even be distracting if it doesn't fit what you're doing,
Of course.
Like what, yeah.
Like I feel like there's so, like, not to knock on like prog music or anything like that, but there's a lot of that kind of genre that like I personally can't get into it because I feel like it seems very self-serving. Maybe I'm wrong, but like but I hear these stories about like, people taking like 10 years to make a record because they've just been working on like the same guitar riffs, like trying to make these like amazing guitar riffs for 10 years. And it's like, yeah, I'll listen to it at 10 years later when that record finally comes out, and I'll be like, yeah, that's really good. Like, you're a really good guitar player. But like, cool. What else you got? Like, yeah. I want to hear more music of the people that I like than less frequently. But like, it's really technical. I don't know. It's yeah.
No, look, I love that there are people out there who love all kinds of music, and I have friends who are almost exclusively into prog, and I've listened to it. I have a kind of a love-hate with it. There's certain stuff I like, certain that goes too far for me. And then the same thing with jam bands, I think is very similar. When you were talking about like a guy just up on stage doing whatever, I thought, oh, well, like Fish fans would love that, but
then, there's different crowds for it, right?
But that's not something that I click with, because I want to know where my in is, like what, and that's their in, I guess. But how do I connect with music? And for me, it's always the song. It's all, what's a good song?
Yeah, I resonate way more with good songs than I do good performers. Yeah, that's kind of the easiest way I can sum it up.
Now, speaking of good performers and songs, you've produced quite a few acts, right?
Yeah. I've been doing this for over 15 years now.
Nice. Yeah. And two of them, the two that you mentioned, were Hang Time and Nothing Serious.
Yeah, those are just a couple local bands that I recently worked with, and those guys are awesome. Both bands are a lot of fun. To me, it's like both of those bands, it's like they're a great example of bands that just like to keep things simple.
Yeah.
Hang time, especially like those guys, it's like we always talk about like what's the easy, like let's just play straighter, like let's just, we kind of call it like Ramones rock, and it's like
Yep.
it's just super simple, like doesn't need to be complicated, and I love that for that. It's just like we focus on like catchy melodies, catchy like harmonies and that kind of stuff, and just let the messages of the song like come through the lyrics. But musically it's often pretty simple, but I love that stuff. Like that's, I mean,
Mhm.
I've always like, I grew up on like a lot of punk rock music. Like my uncles got me into it very early. I love the Ramones and all those bands, and so yeah, like to me, like playing working with that kind of stuff is stuff that just really excites me because it's what I grew up with and it's what I love.
It was cool because I listened to it earlier today and I was like, oh yeah, this is music that I've gotten into for a long time now, and it's it's exactly what you want from that music. So well
Yeah,
done.
it's like
Yeah.
it's not about overcomplicating it. It's just like let's just have fun with this. Let's it's the same thing we've been talking about this whole time. It's just keep things simple, make it
Yeah.
fun, and people will enjoy it.
So they're local to where? Where are you?
So I'm just outside of Toronto. So both of those bands are from the Toronto area. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Spent a little time in Toronto a couple of years ago. I loved it.
Oh
So
no way.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Toronto's an awesome city. Like I've lived here basically my whole life. Just well, I lived downtown Toronto for like about 8 years, but I've always been on the outskirts. Aside from those 8 years, I've always been like give or take half hour from the city, and I love being close to the city.
It's a great city. I was there a long time ago, and the thing that struck me, one of the things I remembered was the underground mall. And and then I went again a couple of years ago with my fiance, and we kind of explored more of the outskirts and things. And it's just, yeah, it's a great city to visit.
It's funny.
And
I've so rarely been in that underground mall, and it confuses me so much that I avoid it at all costs.
yeah, it's like a maze. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know wherever we exited, it's not where we entered. That's all
Yeah,
I know.
it never is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I one of the things you said is something that I am always fascinated by, which is people who start doing one thing doesn't mean they stop it, but they often transition into something else as their main gig. So you started as a drummer and we were in bands and all of that, and then you had that moment where you were saying you'd always been into tech, and then the band was kind of breaking up. I would love to talk a little bit more about that and what excites you about tech, and what was going on in your kind of process at the time to say, well, because other people might have just said, I'm just going to start another band and keep this going, but you went that way.
Well, I did start another band. Like I had bands kind of for a large chunk of me, like in my early stages of recording. Like I got into recording because I wanted to serve my band. I wanted to be able to record these songs and all that kind of stuff. And that was really my original motivator. Um, but on the tech side of things, like I don't know, I was always that kind of guy that just loved playing with like just electronics. Like I could think of like as a kid, I used to like always play with like my uncles. My uncles were like probably like my biggest musical influences. Like they got me into music very early, and like they were big collectors of music and stuff. And I always remember like as a kid, like even just sitting by like their like cassette players or their CD players or whatever, and like playing DJ. Like I thought I was gonna be a DJ one day. Like that was my original thought when I was like, you know, 8 or something. Like it's like I just want to play music and like play with all this electronic stuff. So I thought I was gonna do that, and then like I got really into computers, and then once I realized like the power of like digital recording, like that's really when I dove in. Like when I first started learning, I was learning on like analog tape. When I went to college for music production, like I was learning on analog tape there,
Mm-hmm.
but I always saw that the digital realm was like a super powerful thing. Like I was like the person in college when like my teachers were like, "Hey, you got to use tape machines." I was like, "Can you show me how to like let's get Pro Tools synced up here? Like how do we do this? Like, I'd rather like work in this area because it was to me it was the future." And I was just always fascinated by that. I'm always into new technology and finding ways to just make your process easier, more streamlined. Um, and I think these days you kind of need to be. You need to be really fast at this. You need to understand the tech because people don't have the budgets, people don't have the time,
Mm-mm.
and by learning the technology, you can get really fast at this stuff, and you can make amazing results. So, yeah, that was. I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I've just always
Right.
been a techie kind of guy. So that's ultimately what got me into it, and just the love of playing with stuff, and with recording stuff too. It's always like, you tweak this knob here and it does something, maybe like the reverb tail grows longer or whatever. And like, to me, that was exciting. Like, I was like, I could play with this technology and make all these cool sounds just by moving things around. And I don't know, that just really excited me. So, it just seemed like a natural fit, I guess.
Yeah, or let's say you put some effect on a keyboard that you're like, let's just drag this in, see what it does, and it changes the sound in a way that's unexpected. That just kind of gives you that excitement, or
For
you
sure.
know.
And I was also lucky that, like, my last band that I had, that was like my last serious band, I would say, I was also in a band with, like, everyone in the band was a recording engineer or producer. One of the guys was a mastering engineer. And
Whoa.
so, like, I learned a lot just from being in that band. Like, we did all our own recordings. Um, Actually, that's a lie. We did work with other producers just because we felt like sometimes we were too close to it, so we would hire other people to help. But like, we did a lot of our own demos all the time, and I just learned a lot by working with those guys. And my singer in particular in that band, he played keys, and he was like really into synthesis and like really understand keyboards, and like, when you tweak this knob, this sound happens. And I was just always fascinated by that. I was like, this is like a world to me. Like, I used to just load up presets and hit notes, and that was all I got, right? And then to the idea of like, oh, you can shape these sounds even more, like that just opened my eyes up to a whole new world as well.
Yeah, I want to actually transition into this because it's something that that's one of the main topics here. But I started on 4 tracks, cassette recorders, and I kind of graduated to studios and was able to finance like 6 or 7, projects somehow, and then couldn't finance anymore. And it just so happened that at that time, that's when digital recording was starting to really come in. And I learned, like you said, like over the shoulder of other people who were doing it in the studios or in another band. And I've always had this feeling like I love knowing how to do things. I don't always love actually doing them. But when you're looking for, completing something on a budget, because there's nothing that's going to stop me from releasing my music, well, however it is. And I needed to know that I could be good enough to release it, that was at least on some general, in the mix. It's in the mix of the par of everything else that's out there, so that I can continue to share this with people. And so I taught, and myself and other people taught me things that you can do at home in a studio to get to that point, so that I didn't have to, spend thousands of dollars or way more putting EPs and albums together. I would love to go back to do that at some point. But until then, this is what we have, and it's what a lot of us have. And you made a comment here that said, what's possible for musicians rather than having to book expensive studio time somewhere else. And the question I have along with that is, what benefits do you think there are recording from home as opposed to in a studio?
I think there's lots of benefits. There's the benefit of convenience, where it's like, as soon as you come up with an idea, you can record your idea. You're not keeping it in your head and forgetting things. Again, going back to the reason why I got into this, it was like that's exactly what it was, right? So whenever you're feeling inspired, you can try things. I think from an experimentation side of things, when you have the ability to record your own stuff, you can experiment with it a little bit more. You can work on arrangements, you can work on adding new elements, you can try different effects and this and that, because when you do it from home, you have that freedom to do that. You have the time to do it. I do think time is another benefit of it as well, in the sense that you don't have to rush through the process. Like, I know, just working in a lot of studios, time is always one of those things that like scares people. When you're like, okay, we only have the budget for like 10 hours of recording and we're on hour 8, like, okay, we got to like speed this up, and then like quality gets sloppy, all that kind of stuff. So I think time is also a really beneficial thing. I also think that, like, there's just, when you invest in your own equipment, it is an investment. The reality of it is like, you can get started for like $500 these days. Like, everyone has a computer already, so you can get like an interface probably even for a couple $100 and get started with it. You can make your own music, and that's not a big investment. If you want to go a little if you want to spend a little bit more money, you absolutely can. Like, I know guys that have spent tens of thousands of dollars on their home studio, and I'm one of those guys, you know. But to me, I've always seen it as an investment because like that's something that like I make my living off of. But that's another opportunity, is that like, you know, when you have when you have the ability to record your own music, you have the flexibility to release music whenever. You know, you're not waiting to like bank up enough money to go to a studio, then then distribute your music afterwards. You can just record a song now. Like, you could literally like, come up with a song right now, hit record, and in an hour from now you could have that song on like Spotify. You know what I mean? Like, it's that simple these days. Whereas like before, it was you had to spend so much money to go to the studio, wait for the mixing engineer, hope that they did a good job. That's another benefit to it, which I'll get to in a second. But like, you had to hope that they did a good job, and then if they did, then like you wait for the files, blah blah blah. It just takes the process just took a long time. Whereas now it's just convenient. And then to go back to the point of like, just you're not relying on other people as well to create your vision. That's a big thing for me. I've worked in enough studios as a musician to know that like I'd like to think that I'm hiring people that are competent, and I like to think of people that like are going to get me a good result, but it hasn't always happened. You know, sometimes like their vision for the song is just not what I envisioned. So I think being the person in control also gives me that freedom to experiment and get the sounds exactly the way I want, rather than like trying to communicate to someone else how to do it, because that doesn't always work. So yeah, I mean, that's just a handful of reasons, but I really do think that being able to record yourself is just, it's such a empowering thing, and it can just do so much good stuff for you. And yeah, like, you can experiment. That's one of the big things. Just you experiment, find out what you like, what you don't like. That's with your songs. You can experiment by releasing music very frequently to see what works and what doesn't, what people like, what they don't like. I don't know. I just think there's so many possibilities with home recording that the need to go to these big studios isn't really there that much these days. And you can absolutely get amazing results from home, and you don't need to go to these amazing places, like these places that just look impressive, have all the gear. Because at the end of the day, like, nobody cares when they're listening to your song. Nobody cares what preamp you used or what console you use or what microphone. Like, nobody knows that. You know, like if I play a song for my wife, she's gonna be like, cool, good song, bad song. You know, like that's all it is. You know, it's like, it's not gonna be like, oh, I like the way you use that Neve 1073 preamp on. Like, no one knows that. You know what I mean? So it's just like, yeah, being able to record your own music just whenever things are inspiring, I think that's the biggest thing. And you can still get amazing results. You know, it's not the difference between like high end gear versus low end gear. Like, honestly, it's not significant enough to justify changing, like, to like all those benefits that I just mentioned, like having the 2% difference, if that, in sound quality isn't worth losing all those benefits to me.
Yeah. It's like what people say about cars. Like, you can spend $300,000 on a car, or you could spend 16, and both of them are going to get you down the road.
Yeah.
Like, and I think the thing that I love the most about home recording is the ability to experiment and discover what works, and have that kind of control to where, well, in my sonic vision, I'm hearing it this way, I want it to come out that way. I had experiences with some, I want to talk about this difference here, producers and engineers. And the one producer, he was there to facilitate what I wanted and make it better. And that project I still love to this day. The next producer, he knew what he wanted and wasn't really clued into where I was coming from. And I was, I guess, too young to really, get in there and do much about it. But I think my identity got a little bit lost in the shuffle there. And after that, I said, I don't care where I record, whether it's at home or in a studio. I want to know that what I'm producing, it comes from me. It's my vision. But what I noticed was I'm a really good producer, but it was the engineering side of things that I really had to get up to speed on, that I'm actually still learning about. Mm-hmm. And can you talk about the difference between those two things?
Yeah, absolutely. There's couple different hats that I guess you can wear with this, right? Like there's the producer whose job it is to help make sure that the song is sounding the absolute best it can, work on arrangements, all that kind of stuff. I kind of lump in that producer side of things a little bit more with like the writer side of things as well. Like it's a combination of both. But there is clearly the writer side of it where you're working on the songs, and that is a skill in itself. And you have to have great songs to catch people's attention, really. But yeah, so there's like the writer, there's the engineer who is the person who's ultimately like setting up the microphones, recording it all in, and getting the best sounds. And then there's the producer who's kind of like someone who's going to oversee the project a little bit more, to make sure that like the vision of the song is met, between the artist and whoever else is involved in this creative vision. And often these days, I would say that the producer and the engineer, they're, because of budget reasons, they tend to be the same person. So there is like kind of wearing both of those hats. And then there's like the mixing engineer who's the person who puts all the tracks together. There's a mastering engineer who's kind of like the final step of like preparing the songs for digital release or for CDs or vinyl, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I think that like you can be good at one of those things, but not the rest. I do think that like I'm not a songwriter by any means, like I don't write songs. I can collaborate with other people. I can be in the room with people who are writing songs and have my opinion of them. And I also have like, I'm a drummer. I don't have like the notation theory stuff. Like I don't know that. Like you can play me a chord and I couldn't tell you what it is. But I could tell you if it's just through my own ear training, I could tell you if it's the right chord or the wrong chord. I could tell you if it's in the wrong key, that kind of thing. And I could slide my hands around a guitar neck to find that right note and be like, okay, this is the note that I'm hearing. That's just personally the way I approach things, just because again, I'm not super trained and I'm trying to get better at it. Like I recently bought a guitar, I bought a bass, like I've been like trying to learn this stuff just for myself, just to get better at it. But yeah, I think you can be good at certain areas and not others. And I think that's why, again, like the collaboration idea is a great idea as well, right? Because like you can work with people who are good at those other things that you're not, and create a team of people that can all come together and rise above together.
What would you say, just out of curiosity, a project that you've worked on at any point in your career that you just thought, oh man, this is why I'm doing this. I love the whole process and the people and the songs and all of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to that band Hang Time that we talked about earlier. To me, like I love those guys. They're just like, everything about them is fun when I'm working on a project with them. Like it's so low key. It's like we just joke around. It's like being in the room with fun people. We all have this mutual love of the music that we're all working on. Everyone is open to ideas, which is another great thing. Like we have our pre-production practices where it's like they'll play me their songs and I'm like, cool, what if we try moving this around here? Or what if we try simplifying this? Or like, maybe you don't play that guitar part in this section here, let's try this. And we just try these ideas out. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But to me, like that is like, that's a big element of like when I work with a band. I love to have open lines of communication where we're all talking about like the same thing, we're always on the same page, but we also experiment. We're always serving the song and everyone's open to trying things. It's not always going to be the best solution, but we try it and we can quickly determine whether or not it was a good idea or not, and if it is, then it stays. If it's not, then we scrap it, but at least we tried. So like working with those guys is just like such a dream, because like it's just so easy, and like I love working on the music. It's like punk rock and like all that stuff is just, that's what I personally love doing. So I have fun working on it with the guys, and then musically I enjoy it. Like I can listen to it a gazillion times, which I think is important as an engineer, and I can listen to it without feeling burnt out by it. Like it still excites me every time I hear it. So yeah, that's personally why I love that. Yeah.
And I think that last thing you said, it says it all, which is when you listen to it now, it still excites you.
Yeah, I mean, like I've always been the kind of person that like I have to do what excites me. If I'm not doing something that excites me, I have to leave. Like I've tried to do it, like I've tried to have other jobs in the past where it's like, oh, if I get this job, I'll make good money or whatever. And like, and I just hate it. I hate my life doing that, you know? So like for me, it's like I always want to be doing things that like I enjoy doing. Um, and when things don't become fun, well then that's when I leave it, you know, or I try something different, you know. But but I've you know, I experimented so much within the audio industry as well. Like I knew music, like audio was my thing. And so I, like I said, like I worked in audio post-production. So I did sound for film, TV. I did the live sound stuff. And like, I love different elements of those different areas of the industry, but there were things about them that just didn't feel right to me or that I had to get out at some point, you know, and that's why like coming back to the studio world and working with bands, that was my thing. And like just having these conversations with people, that was the thing that I enjoyed the most. So that's why I do it now.
It's good to be open to knowing when something you can do is not necessarily the thing that you want to do, you know.
Yeah, like I mean, doing live sound, like I loved doing that. And like I was fortunate that I got to go on some really cool tours. You know, I got to travel and get paid to travel, and you know, I got to like go on the road with like Kiss for a whole summer. Like that was really
Oh,
cool.
wow.
So like that was an amazing time. But at the same time, on that same tour where I was having like one of the times of my life, you know, like stuff was going back at home, like stuff was going down at home. Like I knew people that were like dying at home, and like I was on the road. I couldn't leave my job to go fly home. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
so
yeah.
like that to me was like
Tough.
I thought to myself like, okay, long term, like how long can I do this before like there starts to be this like resentment of me being on the road and not being at home with my family and that kind of stuff. So that was a big
Mhm.
decision I had to make, and so that's another reason that pulled me back home and gave me a little bit more of a home base and allowed me to work in the studio with people.
It's pretty awesome that the thing you found, it also fits your life. Because what if you loved live and you were on the road all the time, but you had a family? Like that, just that
Exactly.
you know, conflict. So
Exactly. And like I've seen it happen so many times, like that people just dedicate their lives to it. And it's like it's kind of a selfish thing in a way, because it's like you're doing it just because it's like you love doing it. But and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know, just for it takes a different type of lifestyle. It takes a different support team or whatever to live that kind of life, you know?
yeah, to make it all work. Well, something else that you do is you write, and you wrote a book. And what I'd like to you tell everybody how it came about and what it's about.
Yeah, so I wrote this book called The Mixing Mindset, and basically it's just walking people through the process of mixing their music from home. So once you've got all the music in, it's like, what do you do with these tracks? Because it's not just a matter of recording the sounds in. Like now that you have the individual drum tracks or guitar tracks or vocals, everything has to come together. And the only way you can get clarity is by kind of fitting these different instruments together and using tools like EQ or compression and all these other audio processing tools to create the clarity and to almost make I think of it like a puzzle. It's like you're kind of making the puzzle pieces work together, and then ultimately, when they all come together in the right way, you get a great sounding mix that's enjoyable. So yeah, I wrote this book mainly because it was stuff that I was already teaching through my website, but I wanted to just make it a little bit more accessible for people. I wanted it to be something that people can be working on their music and not have to stop in the middle of it to go watch a video. Instead, they can have something that was like right by their desk, and they can just quickly glance at it and follow through that process there. So that's really the reason why I wrote it. And it's been a fun process to do it too. Like I wrote that a few years ago now. I'm slowly working on another book, but
Ooh.
so we'll see when that comes out. But you know that'll be all about like actual recording and getting sounds in the first place. So I've been working on it slowly, but it's kind of a fun process to do that, because it really teaching music has also made me a better engineer, because it's forced me to look at my own processes and refine them. So it's like, okay, am I doing this the most efficient way? You know, is there a faster or better way to do this? So I've really been like refining my process over the years as I'm thinking about this stuff to teach people. And it's just really streamlined my process. I've got a lot better, like much better results, and I'm much faster at it. I have a lot more focus, a lot more clarity. And so this book is kind of like everything that I've been working on coming together into this book. So, you know, how can I just simplify this process for myself and for others? And that's why I put out the book.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I have to tell everyone that I'm getting this book because I want it by my side. Mike, I know, as I mentioned before, that I have a recording project in the works and I haven't started yet. I'm going to be doing next year. This is something that I need. So, I'm glad you put out a book like this. I like the idea that you have all of these options. You have the one-on-one with the coaching and your
Yeah.
website, and then a book as well. And all of them work well together, but they can work individually. Talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, everyone learns in different ways, and there are different levels of commitment, different levels of learning and investments that people want to make as well. And so, I'm just trying to go back to my original purpose for this website, just to help people put out more music. It's like, that's why I want to have like the affordable options. And if people want to work with me more directly, then like, I'd love to help people. And like, I do one-on-one coaching, and, I work with people through making their records, throughout the mixing process, like going back and forth until the songs are sounding good. And that's not like, to me, like that's definitely on my pricier side of things, but that's just because I'm invested into it so much, and I'm working directly one-on-one with people.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone has their own need for that. Like some people want that, some people don't. And that's just why I've tried to make things available at different price points and different mediums. Like, whether it's writing a book or watching a video, like there's people learn different ways, right?
I have to tell everybody that one of the reasons why this whole interview came about was because we were back and forth about, potentially working together and you helping me. But that's great. And I noticed that, I mean, it was easy to notice that you're really good at what you do. But really what made me even reach out was because you're so good at communicating, and you're just an easy guy to talk to and work with.
Thank you.
And so I don't know if anybody out there is looking, because I've worked with so many people who are amazing at what they do, but maybe, the fit wasn't right. You just, like that to me is the essence of a good relationship on any level. And you make all these other things that you do well work even better because of that.
Thank you. I mean, I think communication is such a big part of any relationship. And yeah, especially like, when you're working with people one-on-one, you have to just be a good person to be around, like, whether you're in the studio or it's a coaching situation or whatever, like just life in general, being a friend, you still need to be a good person to be around. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think that it's like something I do consciously. It's like I'm just it's just me, I guess.
Who you are. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think too that like, on the side of the coaching and all that, like part of coaching is that you're often identifying people's blind spots that they didn't even know they had, right? And so sometimes people are stuck on things and they think the solution is one thing, and it's like, as a coach, you have the ability to kind of take that larger picture view and be like, the real issue that I'm seeing is actually like you're 2 steps ahead of where you should be, or like you're focusing on the wrong thing, and that has to be done with a certain level of grace to the way you approach that, but ultimately, like, when you're working with people and coaching people through the process, like you just want people to see that you're showing them the right way, and like, you have to be compassionate about it. You have to just be open. You need to have good communication skills to get your point across, and ultimately, when you do that's when people are receptive to it and they start to see progress, and then it goes from there, right?
And it seems like the way you do it is it comes from kind of listening to the person and their work, and doing your best to understand not just the music, but where they're coming from.
For sure. Like just as a classic example that I often see is that like I have a lot of people who will send me mixes and be like, oh, like I've been working on this mix forever and like I just can't get it sounding good. And they'll send me the track and it might not sound very good. And in the mind of these people, sometimes it's like they have mixing problems, and it's like, well, I know how to use all the tools. I already know like EQ and compression, like, but I just can't get it sounding good. And it's like, well, maybe the problem isn't actually a mixing problem. Maybe it's the way you've recorded these instruments in the first place. Maybe that's what we have to focus on. Maybe it's like the editing process. Maybe like your track sounds sloppy because you haven't edited it like to a professional degree. And so it's like walking people through this process of like finding the real spots that we can improve and finding that that process that is going to work, that formula that's going to work for people to get the results they're looking for. So for me, it's like I really try to work with people through the entire scope of things, whether it's recording or editing or mixing. It's like we need to just master each of these stages, because to get a really good sounding song in the end, I believe that a song needs to go through those different stages: recording, editing, mixing, and it has to be done at the highest quality at each stage. Because when you go from recording to editing, like if you have poorly recorded tracks, your editing's not going to really fix it. It will help a little, but it doesn't change the fact that maybe you use the wrong microphone position or you have the wrong tone or that kind of thing. So it's like there's only so much you can do in each of the stages if the previous step wasn't done to the highest quality.
Yeah. Well, Ned, part of your expertise is knowing which stage you need to hone in on to make that fix too.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're at our hour, and this was so great. I'm so glad that we had an opportunity to do this. Is there anything else that you want to share with anybody?
Yeah, I would just say, like, if anyone's interested in I'm assuming it's a lot of musicians listening to this. So if anyone is working on home recordings, and you're looking for some help with either that recording, editing, or mixing stage, definitely make sure to check out masteryourmix.com. That's where I've got a bunch of great resources to help people. On the website, I've got some freebies too that you can download, like little EQ cheat sheets and compression cheat sheets. That's definitely one area that you'll want to check out. And I would highly recommend checking out the book as well. So once again, that's called The Mixing Mindset, and that is available at masteryourmix.com. And yeah, if anyone's even interested in like working directly with me, having someone that can personally coach them through their productions, and whether you're in the recording stage and you're just workshopping these songs, or maybe you're in the writing stage or the mixing stage, like I'm here to help out at any stage, just to help make sure that you're getting the support you need and that you're feeling confident in your skills. To me, that's a really big part of it, right? Because if you're feeling confident in it, you're going to be more willing to release this music, and that's ultimately what I'm looking for. So yeah, definitely hit me up, masteryourmix.com, or if you're interested in checking out like my own personal music production stuff, you can go to Indovina.com as well, and I've got a bunch of stuff on there as well.
Yeah, that's great. I would recommend checking out all of this. I am going to put all the links here below the video and the audio version, so please click them all and do your own exploring, because it's absolutely worth it. Mike, thank you so much for being
Thanks
with
for having
me
today. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. And to everyone listening and watching, this is my last interview of the year. So enjoy the end of the year and your holidays, and I will be tuning back in 2022. Take care.